So we must do two things, two great things together, to encompass that enormous new view that lies before us, but to encompass it within the framework of science, to see it within the whole categorical framework of science, and to see that these two are not separate, but that they are wedded. The bigness of the idea, the newness of the idea, the greatness of it is one with the structure of science, the structure of being itself.
So we've been looking at the third main tone in the chapter Prayer to see how the system, how the divine system is reforming us. And we have found in that third tone that we are under the regulatory principles of the homeostasis and the homeoraisa. That what comes up in our own development of consciousness are those temptations to deviate from the course. And so the temptations really are against the integrity of the order of mind, spirit, and soul. These temptations are that which must be regulated and corrected. And they are corrected through the interplay of the negative and positive feedback systems, which bring the system of our consciousness into a continually new and higher steady state, a dynamic steady state, meaning that we go steadily forward and we go forward in a balanced way. We said, I think last night, that it's such a different sense of a steady state than the human has, because when the human reaches a state of balance and harmony to some degree, it wants to stay there. It wants to keep that steady and to maintain that. But this is not what the divine regulatory system has in mind. We do not know with the human mind what our advancement should be, what the next phase of the steady state, the dynamic steady state, should be. This is not known to us humanly, but it is known to the principle of our being. And that principle has the system to organize us in that way which will keep us progressively and steadily moving toward the goal. So we saw the first 4 temptations that come up, the first 4 aspects within us that have to be corrected. Any desire to loop out of the law of equity and balance at the point of soul as mind. In soul as spirit, the temptation to opt out altogether, not to even go on referring to our rule, referring back to mind, spirit, and soul, because we have read with our material sense what is going on, and so we see that it's really of no avail, of no use to adhere to the course. So that has to be handled within us and is handled by soul as spirit. And third, there was the temptation to try to cancel sin, to cancel it not by its destruction, but by some very superficial means, namely just to confess it with our lips, with our mouth. Then we've come to principle, and we see that the temptation is to hope that God will overlook it, will overlook sin. The very opposite of a divine principle, of a principle at all, and the belief within us that we only need to ask for pardon from this principle. And so the text has shown us that sin is not pardoned, it is corrected. By whom is it corrected? By divine love. You get the reminder, really, that divine love is reminding you that the whole of the divine cybernetic principle is correcting you, is governing you, that it adapts itself to become the homeostasis and the homeostasis, but it's always that infinite one principle, which is divine love. That this corrects sin, it does not pardon sin, and it is this divine principle alone that can reform you. No other means has a reforming power to it. So the system is brought into a continual, new, dynamic, steady state, and we are required, we are asked to work with this principle and not to work in a half-hearted way or to leave our work undone or badly done. So we come to soul as life, and here the temptation will again change. It's the temptation to seek God's mercy as a method of forgiving sin. And the epitome at that point is that sin destroys itself through suffering. But we reach heaven through an understanding of God's impartial mercy. So we need to see what the mercy of God means, and this is what life will show us. To cause suffering as the result of sin, we get now the outcome of mind, spirit, soul, and principle, the subtones. To cause suffering as a result of sin is the means of destroying sin. So now she brings suffering into focus and says, actually, this is the way the divine homeostasis works. It causes you to suffer when you deviate from the course. And this is love. We've just seen that it's divine love that corrects and governs man. And so that phenomenon of suffering is an indication to us. It's really a double indication. It indicates that we are not totally at the point of equilibrium, that there is something within us that is reacting, responding to the activity of the homeostasis and the homeostasis. So there's a response within us. Something is suffering as a result of deviating from the divine course. This is an excellent indicator. What is suffering? Why do we suffer, other than what we've already said? That's a very general question, so I'll answer it for you myself. It's too general. To suffer is to be uncomfortable, isn't it? To be put into a state of discomfort. And so it indicates to us that the Comforter is working, that divine science is working, and that we must align with the Comforter. To resolve that discomfort, what do? Align with the Comforter. That is, align with what? With divine science, with the system of divine science. And this is the way that the homeostasis works. This is the means of destroying sin. Every supposed pleasure in sin will furnish what? Its equivalent of pain? Huh? More than its equivalent of pain. Yes. This is now the homeoraisa coming in. It gives you more than your present steady state. Okay, so I deviate and I enjoying my sin, and oh, I get the equivalent in pain? No, I get more than its equivalent of pain. Until, wonderful, these terms, they just indicate, until you can hear it's going on and on and on until there's an aligning up with the Course, until belief in material life and sin is destroyed. To reach heaven, the harmony of being, oh, don't you just hear the whole divine system of reference, the whole system of divine science, absolute Christian Science and Christian Science included, working? This is heaven, this is the harmony of being. It is heaven and the harmony of being, small b, really indicating too that there is a perfect dynamic operation of the homeostasis and the homeoraisa. In order to reach that, we must understand. Understand what? The divine principle of being. Or we could say the divine principle of being, since the accent is on life here. So we must understand that divine principle, love, that cybernetic principle, because this is the principle of being. And it is that which is controlling the quality of your being. Whether that being is in a state of suffering or in a state of being in absolute coincidence with the harmony of being, we must understand the way that principle works. And then it comes in again right from divine science, right from that divine principle. God is love. God is love. So don't think that your suffering is anything but love. God being love. More than this. Can you hear the life tone in it? More than this we cannot ask. Higher we cannot look. Farther we cannot go. To have this divine system that the model of being shows us, that the textbook shows us, how could we have more than this? What could be more loving than this principle? When you have a principle, you can't have more than a principle, because a principle is life. Principle is life. Once you touch the principle, you touch that which is able to express itself, to be what it is without measure, with infinite individuality. And so you can't ask for more, you can't look for more, you can't go any farther than this divine principle of your being. And this is the comforter to any claim that suffering is something in and of itself and that it exists apart from the divine principle and its workings. Actually, you see that the cybernetic working of the divine principle is mercy. That is merciful. That is grace. That is the impartial mercy and love of being. That's actually the marginal heading. Mercy without partiality. must be a principle of being that can express itself as impartial mercy. To suppose that God, this divine principle, love, forgives or punishes sin according to as his mercy is sought or unsought, is to misunderstand love, to misunderstand the way love works, that love is always working, that system is, that regulatory system is an activity of the impartial mercy of love. To misunderstand love and to make prayer the safety valve for wrongdoing. So we get the merciful destruction of sin. That destruction is always merciful. It's really that love is bringing us back on the course. That's all that it is, through its feedback mechanisms. And then we come to the subtone of truth, soul as truth. And here the temptation, the test of the system, actually, you see those temptations are tests within us. 7 tests within us. Let me test the integrity of consciousness and see, is there anything within me that wants to opt out through a loophole, that wants to renege and not adhere to the course at all, but to just give the whole thing up? Is there anything within my consciousness that wants to just cancel out my sin? Is there anything within me that wants to overlook it, that wants God to overlook it? I'm perfectly willing to overlook it. Can I get God to overlook it? And can I seek God's mercy to the point of the forgiving of sin? So can you see that the integrity of our developing consciousness is tested from those 7 subtones, those 7 standpoints, to see, is it secure? Is it a dynamic, steady state? So in Soul as Truth now, it will be the test or the temptation. When you hear temptation, it takes you right back into kind of a religious sense. That's why I wanted to lift that up to a more scientific rendering. It's the temptation or the test to try to remove the effects of sin without removing the sin itself. This is very well known to us. It is something that we have, at least we can say in the past, often done, tried to remove the effects, tried to heal the effects, say. Yes, you try to heal the effect of a sin without getting rid of the sin. So the epitome there is that by uncovering, rebuking, and relinquishing error, these are the methods of homeostasis. Uncovering, rebuking, relinquishing the error. Sin and sickness are healed. By utilizing those methods, the system is restored to its course. It is brought back to its state of wholeness. She seems to accentuate the negative feedback and the homeostasis very much in this subtone. Jesus, she says, and we hear that she's going to tell us something about our ideal, that which represents the ideal form of consciousness, of the cybernetic consciousness. And she's going to show us that he reflected within his makeup the negative feedback principle. Now, he was homeostatic in nature. Jesus uncovered and rebuked sin before he cast it out. So there's an uncovering, a rebuking, a casting out, and then she gives us examples of that very thing. Of a sick woman, he said that Satan had bound her. He identified the problem as being attracted to or drawn to an equilibrium state, being drawn or attracted off of the course in some way, that this was what bound her. This is what sickness is. This is what makes you sick, not to adhere to the course. And to Peter he said, "Thou art an offense unto me." Can you hear the homeostasis? That principle of homeostasis, whatever comes along, if it is not in identity with mind, spirit, and soul, it says, you're an offense. This is offensive. So I rebuke that. I reject that. Can you hear it? The homeostasis will rebuke and reject that which is not identical with it, with the system of mind, spirit, and soul. So she's given us really two examples there. She says he came teaching and showing men this. He taught that and he showed it to them, showed them, taught them how to destroy sin, sickness, and death. He taught the principle of homeostasis. He said of the fruitless tree, it is hewn down. In other words, whatever does not bear fruit, whatever is not autocatalytic, whatever is not of the autocatalytic, the nature which is autocatalytic, this is a fruitless consciousness that is not identified with the identity principle of mind and spirit and soul, is a fruitless consciousness. And the homeostasis rejects that. It is hewn down. It is believed by many that a certain magistrate who lived in the time of Jesus left this record. So now she wants to enforce that this actually was Jesus' state of consciousness, and that we can find that in his teachings. She's even going outside, I believe, of the Bible now, and says that it's believed by many that there was a certain magistrate who would confirm that indeed Jesus had the homeostatic consciousness. Because he left this record, his rebuke is fearful.